It's the mid-1960s, 1965, and Marvel is increasing their presence in the comic book market. DC, where do their books rank? We've got past most of the major superhero first appearances. We have a lot of villains. We're going to look at all the top books from the CGC Census, 1965, up next on this video from Bronzeville Comics. Hello, panelologists. This is Jim from Bronzeville Comics coming to you with another video. You know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe, notifications, share this. This series, I get a lot of great feedback on. I think people have been enjoying it. I've been enjoying putting it together, but it does take a lot of work and research and editing to get it all together. So we're going to look at the top books on the CGC census count for 1965. We're looking at only blue labels. We're not looking at restored, conserved, signature series, or qualified. And those numbers are fairly small. Even at their most, there may be about 10% of the number of graded copies that are universal. We don't really talk about values here, but obviously the books that tend to rank higher tend to be more valuable because people are more apt to slab them. It means they're more apt to slab them in lower grades because they still have value in lower grades, whether they're slabbed or raw. And we also talk about the top books of the top. We're going to count down the top 10 books on the CGC census. We're also going to make sure that we include the top 10 books from both DC and Marvel, as well as the most submitted book from each of the other publishers in 1965. And there's a new publisher that we're going to get to. So we'll have to wait a little bit of a while for that. So let's just jump into the list. Coming in at number 10 on the list is Amazing Spider-Man number 23, the third appearance of the Green Goblin. Interestingly, this has a letter from Jim Shooter in it. He was a preteen, I believe, at this point in time. He would be soon writing his own comic book stories for DC. Of course, this is Stan Lee's story, Steve Ditko art and cover, and Green Goblin, one of Spider-Man's most recognizable and longest lasting villains, although he dies a lot. At any rate, he does get better. Amazing Spider-Man number 23, number 10 on the list at a census count of 2,208. The number 9 book on the list is Daredevil number 7. Stan Lee story, Wally Wood cover and art. Wally Wood did a lot of these early issues, and we will be talking about Mr. Wood a little bit later on the list. And this Submariner crossover, what I think is interesting is this is one of the most popular costume change keys without changing a name. Obviously, Dick Grayson becomes Nightwing for its era is very popular, but usually costume changes aren't that big a deal, but this one is. And I think the popularity of this Wood cover with the Submariner enhances that. Now, I'm going to be honest. How is Daredevil going up against Submariner in the water, right? I could see if they were on dry land, he might have more of a chance, but in the water, and how are his senses, affected by being underwater? Anyway, still a cool cover. Daredevil number 7 has a total of 2,438 copies on the census. Let's go to number 8, Amazing Spider-Man number 25. This is the first cameo appearance of Mary Jane Watson. We don't see her face just yet. And we see this Spider Slayer with J. Jonah Jameson. Again, Stan Lee, Steve Ditko working on this book. Even minor Spider-Man keys get very submitted to CGC, especially books under 100. People building that list, that run. People trying to build the run in high grade and compete for the flex of having the CGC registry. This particular book, Amazing Spider-Man 25, has a census count of 2,482. Number 7 on the list is X-Men number 10 by Stan Lee with a Jack Kirby cover, and this is the first appearance of Kazar. It says the first Silver Age appearance of Kazar, but it's a different character than the Golden Age. Actually, the Golden Age Kazar, who was in Marvel Mystery number 1 and continued through issue number 27, was also in a couple of other books, was actually a pulp character who appeared in his own pulp first in 1936, was essentially a Tarzan knockoff. And Kazar here is not that much different than Tarzan, although he's in the Savage Land rather than just the jungle. The original David Rand was the pulp character. This is Kevin Plunder. Also the first appearance of his saber-toothed tiger, Zabu. Kazar would come back over and over again. This is when Kirby's still working on the book, and there is a good amount of imagination in it. I would say that within a fairly short period of time, X-Men and Daredevil were kind of not prioritized by Stan Lee in terms of his storytelling, and he wasn't working with either Ditko or Kirby. Probably the same can be said of Avengers. The creativity ended up being more focused probably in Fantastic Four and Spider-Man. And even Thor. This particular book, X-Men number 10, has a census count of 2,537. And again, X-Men, a popular run, people trying to build. Number 6 on the list, Amazing Spider-Man. Number 28, the first appearance of the Molten Man. And Stan Lee, Steve Ditko, Peter Parker graduates. This is also a popular cover because of the negative space that Ditko used before negative space was really a thing. And a very, very difficult book to get in grade because of that entirely black cover. Creases and spine ticks are just going to eat that alive. I think there is a 9.8 on the census, which is almost impossible to believe that that could happen. But let me just check the highest grade. Now, this particular book, number 28, the average grade on the census is about the same as the others. There are no 9.8s. I'm sorry. That and Daredevil 7 have no 9.8s. The other books, actually in the top 19 do. And this one only has 8 9.6s. So again, a tougher book to get in grade. And a character that's not one of the major Spider-Man villains and hasn't appeared in the MCU. But still, first appearance of a villain, people building the Spider-Man run. And this has a total of 2,852 blue label copies on the CGC census. Number 5 on our list is X-Men number 14. This is the first appearance of the Sentinels. Now, Jack Kirby did the cover and the layouts. So there is a lot of Kirby creativity still here. Werner Roth had taken over the penciling duties with Vinnie Coletta doing the inks. And the Sentinels, and group of antagonists or a force that the X-Men have had to deal with forever, even in X-Men Adventures. They're prominently featured in that very first episode. We've seen them in the movies. Very different than they are on TV or in the comics. But X-Men number 5 has a census count of 3,515. Number 4 on the list, and we're kind of alternating here. This is Amazing Spider-Man number 20. The first appearance of Matt Gargan as the Scorpion. He had appeared in cameo as just Matt Gargan in the previous issue. This is a difficult book as well because there is a pinup inside that is often removed. I got in a collection that had a really nice looking copy. And it's so nice. I just okay, going to clean and press it, put it aside. And then I went through and the pinup was missing. And there were other things clipped out of it. I was like, oh man, I thought it was like an 8. But I picked it up in a collection. So it wasn't like, I got stiffed on it necessarily. It's just there were a bunch of, double digit ASM books. Yeah, there are 378 qualified copies on the census because largely because of that poster that was included. And we are going to see the pinup, and we're seeing that that's going to happen. DC is going to have a book pretty soon that has pinup issues, and some of the posters included, especially in some of the gold key books, as we move into the late 60s, early 70s. That's going to be an issue. And of course, the big qualified issue is going to be when Marvel value stamps come into play in the mid 1970s. Anyway, the first appearance of the Scorpion here in ASM 20, a total of 3,608 copies on the census. The top Fantastic Four book is Fantastic Four number 45, the first appearance of the Inhumans, Stan Lee, Jack Kirby. A couple of them had already appeared, most notably Medusa. We'd also seen Gorgon, but the Inhumans, now we're entering this big surge in creativity for Lee and Kirby on the Fantastic Four book, and I think that's going to really that story is going to be told quite a bit in next year's list. This particular book has a total of 3,767 copies on the census. Number 2 on the list is Amazing Spider-Man number 31. This is the first appearance of Peter Parker's classmates Gwen Stacy and Harry Osborn, who obviously play major roles in his stories going forward. It's also the first appearance of Miles Warren, who becomes the Jackal. Lee and Ditko on this one, of course. And again, I'm talking about people building that Spider-Man run. This is a bigger key from that run. 4,030 copies in the census. And then at number 1, and this kind of surprised me, I guess, a little bit. I thought it would be near the top, but I didn't necessarily think it would be number 1. But I didn't think, because I don't do the research for the following year until I finish editing a particular year. So I don't know what's coming up. I don't know what the top book for 1966 is going to be. I have a pretty good idea, and maybe you do as well. But this is X-Men number 12. It's the first appearance of the Juggernaut, and the Jack Kirby's still doing the cover, and Stan Lee's still writing it, but Alex Toth and Vinnie Coletta are doing the artwork on it. So maybe you got a little bit of inspiration from Kirby. We're going to see X-Men, I think, being less and less of a player. However, there are X-Men collectors. Now, it's a little bit tricky to collect the X-Men run because you do have those reprints that came into play when the series was essentially almost canceled. So there would be some other creativity would return to the book kind of after Lee had left it and Roy Thomas was writing it, and Barry Windsor Smith and Neil Adams were doing the artwork, but it wouldn't help the sales of the book at the time. And it was the last original story was in issue 66, and then issues 67 through 93 were reprints of those earlier stories. And then coming off Giant Size X-Men number 1, starting with issue 94, you do get those brand new stories, and that completely changed the title. As I said, it's a trickier run for people to collect because those reprints, a lot of times collectors will not bother with or kind of save till the end. It's like, okay, I've gotten everything else. I guess, I'll kind of look for them in the wild. But these early issues, and it does give you kind of a decent, logical stopping point. And then there are collectors who might not bother with these earlier issues, but will do like issue 94 to 200 or to 300 or whatever it is, or to 143. When John Byrne left the title, again, people are trying to build X-Men runs. The number 1 book from 1965, X-Men number 12, has a total of 4,080 copies on the census. So let's look at other books. Now, usually I don't necessarily include the 11th book or the 12th book, and people have asked about them in the comments. Usually they're just other issues of series that we've already seen in the top 10. And case in point, I will talk about issue number 11. It's X-Men number 9. It's the first meeting of the X-Men and the Avengers. This was a big spec book. And again, this is Lee and Kirby. This is a big spec book, kind of when Disney bought the Fox Studios, and now they, the MCU has the rights to use the X-Men characters, and people were speculating on everything, the 5th appearance of somebody's mother-in-law. But this first, because we know now we're going to get X-Men and Avengers together, just against each other, working together, probably against each other eventually, initially. But this is their first meeting, X-Men number 9. And this has a census count of 2,188. It's interesting to note. I will just want to return to X-Men number 12, the number 1 book on the list. That book would have only been 4th on the list from 1964. So in 1964, you had the first appearances of Daredevil, Captain America in the Silver Age, and the Green Goblin. Major keys that now I don't think that the first appearance of the Juggernaut competes with that. And I think the first appearance of Gwen Stacy, even though Spider-Gwen is immensely popular, is muted because she's not on the cover. And at that point in time, she's not a superhero. She is a supporting character. Anyway, let's move on to number 16. And number 16 is Journey into Mystery 112. Stanley story, Jack Kirby cover and art. First battle. Actually, it's the second battle between Thor and Hulk. I believe from Avengers 3. This is kind of retelling of the story. What really sells this book is that Jack Kirby cover. Just the dynamics. And you can see the power of Thor versus Hulk. I had to imagine that kids at the time were really drawn to this. And for some reason, just the power of the Hulk going against other powerful heroes, like in the Fantastic Four number 12, is really was a big selling point at this time. And it did enable him to get a backup in Tales to Astonish and eventually get his own book back. This has a census count of 1,918. 17th book on the list is Strange Tales number 135. Human Torch left the Strange Tales series and was replaced by Nick Fury, Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. This is his first appearance. Now, Nick Fury had appeared in Sergeant Fury and his Howling Commandos number 1, which were stories set during World War II. There was a war comic, even though Captain America crossed over, so it was Stan Lee firmly set it in the MCU. Jack Kirby doing the artwork on this with Stan Lee stories. The backup with Doctor Strange here is Steve Ditko doing the artwork on that. So this has, Kirby and Ditko doing the 2 features, which is really cool. And this is where Nick Fury becomes an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. and it's the first appearance of S.H.I.E.L.D. So it is kind of a major key, I think, that is a little bit overlooked. Census count of 1,880. At 19th on the list is Fantastic Four number 36, the first appearance of the Frightful Four. 3 of them had already appeared. The Wizard, Sandman, and the Trapster. I think he's the Trapster at this point in time. No longer Pace by Beat. But it's also the first appearance of Medusa, who we saw was, we saw the first appearance of the Inhumans higher on the list. She is the Queen of the Inhumans. And the first of them to be introduced to later be brought in as a member of the Inhumans. Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, census count of 1,788. First DC book is Batman number 171, and this is the first Silver Age appearance of the Riddler. Carmine Infantino and Murphy Anderson cover and art. Actually, I think Sheldon Moldoff and Joe Giella did the artwork on this. First Silver Age appearance of the Riddler. And the Riddler is, I'm going to say, a character who was propelled by success on television. Not a major member of Batman's Rogues Gallery in the Golden Age. He had a handful of appearances. But this is remarkable in that this particular story was used as the basis for the plot of the first 2 episodes of the Batman television series, which would premiere in 1966, starring Adam West and Burt Ward and Frank Gorshin as the Riddler. Interestingly, how was that show recognized at the time that it came out in 1966? Frank Gorshin was nominated for an Emmy Award for Best Supporting Actor in a Comedy Series for his appearance in that pilot episode of Batman. So he would come back a number of times in Batman. They couldn't always get Frank Gorshin. One time John Astin filled in for him. He only appeared once in season 3. Actually, one time Morris Evans appeared as the Puzzler instead of the Riddler, just a slight change to the script there. But Gorshin's performance was genius. And he was one of the much less known actors on the TV series. Most of the other actors that they brought in had film careers going back like to the 1930s. And, Burgess Meredith, it was of Mice and Men in 1939. Cesar Romero was a major Latin lover in Hollywood films in the 40s and 50s. But this kind of established the Riddler as a major part of Batman's rogues gallery. Catwoman had disappeared with the introduction of the Comics Code Authority. The Joker was still prominent. Penguin took a little bit of a hiatus. Two-Face was gone for a long time. So it was in the Silver Age they started to re-establish the rogues gallery and add a few new pieces, like Clayface had already been added. So this is a fairly major DC book, and it does have a census count of 1,767, the top DC book. At number 24 on the list is Journey into Mystery Annual number 1. And this is the first appearance of Hercules in a Marvel comic book. Stan Lee story, Jack Kirby art and cover. Hercules, a strong counterpoint to Thor, a member of the Avengers for a long time, and was hinted at in there. I mean, he was in a post-credit sequence in Thor: Love and Thunder, played by Brett Goldstein. Was brought in to play him in the post-credit sequence of Thor: Love and Thunder that has yet to be paid off, which is true of a lot of post-credit sequences from Marvel post-Endgame. Blade, Dame Whitman, Eternals. I don't know. We'll see how they're going to tie it all together. Anyway, Hercules, a fairly popular character. There's also a Canadian variant of this, which doesn't have an ad on the back cover. It has a completely white back cover. And this has a census count of 1,502. Number 26 on the list is Daredevil number 8, the first appearance of Stiltman, Stan Lee story, Wally Wood art. One of the sillier villains for Daredevil, but it's interesting that it's this high on the list. It is a single-digit Daredevil, but Daredevil was really pretty much B tier for Marvel. And considering at this point in time, Marvel had limited distribution because they did their distribution of comics through DC or through whoever did DC. And DC basically controlled how many titles Marvel could publish for a long time. Kind of surprising that Daredevil lasted as long as he did. But this has a census count of 1,427. Number 27 on the list is Avengers number 16. This is the first, the change in the lineup, and where Thor, Iron Man, Giant Man, and Wasp leave the team, and they're replaced by 3 characters who had been villains in the past: Hawkeye, Scarlet Witch, and Quicksilver. When they were introduced over the last couple of years in X-Men and Tales of Suspense, they were initially villains, but here kind of had that retribution angle, which is a theme that played out in the Thunderbolts film. And here we have the start of a great new Avengers lineup. So connection there. And this would be the team for quite a while. Jack Kirby did the cover and art on this one. Stan Lee, of course, did the story. 1,363 copies in the census. Number 31, our second DC book. This is Green Lantern number 40. John Broome story, Gil Kane art. This is the first crossover between the Gold and Silver Age Green Lanterns, Hal Jordan and Alan Scott. And it's the first appearance of Krona, who was a member of the Guardians race who wanted to know about the beginning of the universe. And that subplot would kind of sit for about 20 years, and it became the basis of the origins of the multiverse and Crisis on Infinite Earths. So, yeah, we will talk about Alan Scott a little bit later on. This has a census count, second book, DC book of 1,164. Continue with DC. 46th on the list is Showcase number 55, which came out about half a year earlier than the GL book. It's the first full-ish appearance of Alan Scott in the Silver Age. He had appeared kind of in cameo in a flashback story in Flash, one of the Jay Garrick team-ups. But this is also the first Silver Age appearance of Solomon Grundy. This takes place on Earth 2. Dr. Fate and Hourman had already been in the earlier Justice League Justice Society crossovers. I think they were both in the first one. I think they were both in JLA 21. Dr. Fate was definitely in the second one, the Crime Syndicate. Gardner Fox story, Murphy Anderson cover and art. So this particular book has a census count of 828. At number 57 on the list is Doom Patrol, number 99. Oh, there's the Green Lantern. It's the first appearance of Beast Boy, Garfield Logan, who had kind of a weird origin where he got injected with a green monkey serum, and he could take on the shape of any animal, but he was green. His parents died. He was later adopted by Elastigirl of the Doom Patrol and her husband, Mento, and was kind of a dormant character for a long time, but was brought back by Marv Wolfman and George Perez for the New Teen Titans in 1980, became a long-term member of that team, very popular character, of course, also a member of the Teen Titans animated series and Teen Titans Go. And I've said this before, these Teen Titans Go characters, Starfire, Raven, and Cyborg, who we'll have to wait, another 15 years before we get 15 weeks for us before we get them on the list. Household names. He was known by Changeling when they did the New Teen Titans. Then he went back to Beast Boy. Teen Titans Go is a very well-known property because so many young people watched it as kids. This particular book has a census count of 598. Next up is 60th on the list, Brave and the Bold, number 57, the first appearance of Metamorpho, Bob Haney story, Ramona Fredone cover and artwork. She actually had done Aquaman previously, like in the late 50s, early 60s, and was raising a family. I think she essentially took maternity leave and then came back for this book. Metamorpho, a guy who encounters this strange meteor. It changes his body, and he can change his body into any element. Kind of also has that aspect of being a freak, like the Doom Patrol had explored. Didn't want to be part of the JLA, but Metamorpho is going to be a character in the Superman movie. I'm kind of excited to see that, and that has really boosted the popularity of this particular book. Currently has a census count of 590. Next book on the list is Brave and the Bold, number 63. This is the second appearance of the Teen Titans, the first time they're called the Teen Titans, and it's the first appearance of Wonder Girl, Donna Troy. Bob Haney story, Bruno Premiani art, and a Nick Cardy cover. Now, here's the thing about Wonder Girl. This is her first appearance, but I don't think Bob Haney knew that at the time because there were Wonder Girl stories for several years in the Wonder Woman comic book. There are also Wonder Top stories. But much like Superboy stories at the time in the Silver Age, they were stories of Wonder Woman as a girl on Paradise Island. Costume's very similar. It's just like, the junior version of the costume. She's not a separate character at that time. She wasn't the sidekick. But Bob Haney saw Wonder Girl. Oh, let me throw we need another sidekick. And I guess, I don't know, Speedy failed the drug test or something. So they went with Wonder Girl, who didn't exist previously. So they had to create a whole backstory, which was all sorts of convoluted and is one of the most convoluted characters in comic book history. This particular book has a census count of 575. Up next is Batman number 169. This is the second Silver Age appearance of the Penguin. Also was, I'm going to say, with the Joker, the most popular, well, the most frequently used villain on the Batman TV series. Supposedly, they always had a script on hand in case Burgess Meredith wanted to do an episode. He was in a lot of episodes. I wouldn't say the most popular, because obviously Gorshin's depiction of Riddler was so iconic. He was popular. And Julie Newmar's Catwoman was very popular for unique reasons. Yeah, people like looking at Catwoman. Guys did. Most I mean, girls did too. I'm sure, Pussycat enjoyed working with her. The Batman 169 Carmine Infantino art. This has a cover. Actually, Sid Green did the interior art with Shelley Moldoff. This has a census count of 466. Next book on the list is Strange Adventures number 180. This is the origin and first appearance of Animal Man, Buddy Baker, who he doesn't get a costume just yet. And this is also Carmine Infantino, Murphy Anderson cover. Dave Wood did the story, and Infantino did the interior art. A one-off. This was much like Hank Pym Ant-Man, the Man in the Anthill. This was never, I was a man with animal powers. This was an anthology title of like just sci-fi stories that DC was publishing at the time. They brought him back, gave him a costume, and then he was forgotten for years. Was actually a member of the Forgotten Heroes. And the character gained increased popularity when Grant Morrison gave him his own series and really did like a meta take on it. And Ant-Man has remained popular since then. He's also been popular because it's a little bit different. They have him with a wife and kids, so he's kind of like a middle-aged dad who's also doing the superheroing thing. Speculation, rumor, maybe we'll get him in the DCU, but there haven't really been any major announcements out of them for a while. We'll see. I still like the character, and this has a census count of 420. Issue number 99 on the list, World's Finest number 153, which has the famous Batman slapping Robin panel that became a huge meme. This has a Kurt Swan and Shelley Moldoff cover and art. It's for that panel, right? Which unfortunately gets lost when you put it in a slab, but a lot of people have, to the count of 466. Now we're going to go to another publisher. This is Dell's top book, coming in at number 100. So interestingly, in the top 100, there's one Dell book. There are 9 DC books and 90 Marvel books. Lobo number 1, the first appearance of Lobo, right? Don Arlison's story, Tony Tallarico cover and art. This is the first African-American character to headline his own title. Lasted for 2 issues only, but does have he's a Western gunfighter. This is a Western book. And it does have cultural significance because of that. And it's a very collectible book and a harder one to find because it's a Dell Western. So this comes in at number 100 with 269 copies on the census. Let's go back to DC. This is Showcase 59. This is the third appearance of the Teen Titans, the second appearance of Wonder Girl. And this is their last kind of tryout book with the Two Brave and the Bold in the Showcase before they would get their own book in 1966. Stay tuned. This has a census count of 259. That's the 10th book, DC book. And again, to juxtapose, 259 to be 10th on the DC list, Amazing Spider-Man 23, 2,208 to be 10th on the overall list and on the Marvel list. Up next, Our Army at War, number 151. This is the first appearance of the Enemy Ace, Robert Kanigher story, Joe Kubert cover and art. Enemy Ace was a World War I German fighter pilot, so it's kind of told from a different point of view. Character has been used in different iterations over the years in a way to explore some interesting stories, right? The a much different time period, a different approach, in looking at the war. So kind of a major first appearance. Again, a war book, a little hard to find, 196 copies on the census. I did say there was a new player in town. There's a brand new publisher of comic books. And I also alluded to the artist that was the driving force behind it. This is Tower Comics. And their top book was Thunder Agents #1 with a Len Brown story, Wally Wood cover. It also included art by Reed Crandall, Gil Kane, George Tuska, and Mike Sikowski. It's the origin and first appearance of Dynamo, No Man, Mentor, Iron Maiden, and the Thunder Squad, the Thunder Agents. This is a thicker book. So what it was is they had multiple stories with each of these different characters. They came together at the end. Lasted for 20 issues. Tower Comics had some spin-off titles. The guy front and center, Dynamo, had his own title. No Man, who was an android, had his own title. They had a couple Teen Humor books. And it lasted for 3 years, 65 to 68. Thunder Agents has been republished by other publishers. DC did an archive series collecting all the stories. They also did a new series at one point in time, but there's been a lot of questions to exactly who had the rights to the Thunder Agents. This coming in with a census count of 148. The top book from Warren is a magazine. It's Creepy #3 with this great Frank Frazetta cover. Seems to be influenced to me by Eerie #1, certainly. Classic Frazetta cover. Magazine sized again, census count of 143. The top gold key book, Astro Boy #1. First appearance of Astro Boy. It's the only issue. It's the first appearance of Astro Boy in U.S. comics. He did premiere in manga in 1952. It's a Japanese character, very popular character over there. I would say an immensely popular character at the time in Japan. But it only had this one issue with gold key, and it has a census count of 142. Close behind it from Gold Key is their top TV adaptation, and that's The Munsters #1 with the photo cover of Fred Gwynn and Yvonne DiCarlo. Based on the TV series that ran for 2 seasons, 64 to 66, ran concurrently with the Addams Family. Two varied things about these kind of spooky monster type families and fish out of water stories. Has had reboots. Did have a movie at the time. Actually, I think it had 2 movies at the time. For folks of my generation, a big part of popular culture. And this does have a census count of 134. By the way, younger folks who may be more familiar with the movie My Cousin Vinny, starring Joe Pesci, the Karate Kid, and Aunt May. The judge is played by Fred Gwynn, who plays Herman Munster here, who referred to them as 2 Utes. So this has a census count of 134. Top book from Charlton is Strange Suspense Stories #75. This is a reprints of those early Captain Atom stories done by Steve Ditko. Steve Ditko did the cover. Joe Severin did the interior art. The previous book, top book from Charlton, the previous year was Blue Beetle #1, and that ran for 4 issues, and then there was 5 issues renumbered from 50 to 54 for some reason. We'll, in short order, see the Charlton heroes emerge for their brief period of time, kind of following after Tower, kind of similar stories of creating superheroes for a different publisher. We'll come back to that in just a minute. Another Charlton book on the list, and the first appearance of Judo Master in Special War Series #4, Frank McLaughlin story, cover, and art. Judo Master was used in the Peacemaker TV series in a much different way. And one of the Charlton characters, he did have his own book for a while that was not adapted, in Watchmen by Alan Moore, as a different character. This has a census count of 107. I talked about other teams. The top book from Archie is Mighty Crusaders #1 with a Jerry Siegel story and Paul Reinman and Joe Giella art, with Reinman doing the cover. It has the origin of the shield. It has the black hood and other characters from MLJ, which later became Archie Publications, their golden age. This lasted for 7 issues under the Archie banner. And again, the popularity of superheroes is burgeoning these other companies to try their own superheroes. So the top Archie book had 39 copies on the Census. Now, the next book I'm going to talk about is really an unsung, underappreciated. It's a magazine. Odd first appearance. It's first appearance of comic strip. The comic strip was drawn by a hugely influential comic book artist creator, and this is Help number 22, Beatles photo cover. But what this is from Warren. What the significance of this is, and you don't see it in Key Collector, you don't see it on a lot of these sources. It's the first mainstream published appearance of Fritz the Cat by Robert Crumb. Was G to PG at this point in time. By the time he got his own animated film in the 70s, directed by Ralph Bakshi, it was not. So kind of an iconic character. I think he was in a 2-panel comic strip in this particular book, which has a census count of 22. Now, the top, I always talk about the top Archie book, and the top Archie book is Mighty Crusaders. Then we talk about the top Archie book that's set within the Riverdale universe, and that is Betty and Me #1, Dan DiCarlo and Rudy Lappick cover and art. A pretty cool cover, and I like the light blue in the sky. Archie, why are you spending so much time with Betty? She's standing on my flippers. Issue #1s are going to be popular. There are a lot of Archie books, and the top sellers at the time, Archie was amongst them, along with Superman. 35 copies on the Census. That being said, the next book on the list was another huge seller at the time, and that's Richie Rich from Harvey Comics, issue number 33. And I said this about the top book from 1964 for Harvey, which was a Richie Rich random issue. This is Richie Rich number 33. No idea why there would be 31 copies on the Census for this book as opposed to other Richie Rich keys. I don't know. 31 copies on the Census. And there are a lot of file copies of these. I will say that. Not much more that we can say right now about Richie Rich. 31 copies on the Census. Top from American Comics Group is Herbie #8. And we talked about Herbie in the last 2 installments. His first cover appearance and issue #1 of this particular title. Ogden Whitney cover and art, a Richard Hughes story. This is the origin and first full appearance of Herbie as the Fat Fury. Herbie and President Lyndon Baines Johnson makes an appearance. Herbie had these bizarre superpowers. Maybe he got them from the lollipops he ate. He was near omnipotent. A very strange character, does have a very loyal following of fans. And so, but only to a degree. There are only 18 copies of this book on the Census. Next book is from Commercial Comics and published through the American Cancer Society. It's Where There's Smoke, no number, and it's Where There's Smoke, There's Fire. It talks about the dangers of kids, teens smoking. A little quaint for its time, I guess. Smoking was much more common than it is now, advertised on television. And it wasn't till the 70s that that would be brought down a little bit. So this is, again, a public service book, and it has a total of 15 copies on the Census, which ties it with the top book from EC. Oh, wow, they've fallen. Magazine, Mad #99. nothing that separates this necessarily from other Mad issues of the era. And so this also has 15 copies on the Census, just a few more very low census count books left. The next book on the list is from Alter Ego. It's Alter Ego number 8, the fanzine created by Jerry Bales. And the most popular issue from that run is the one with the Black Adam cover. This was a Black Hawk cover. 7 copies on the Census. From Gilberton, they're still rolling along with reprints. This is Classics Illustrated number 26, HRN number 167. It's the story of Frankenstein. The cover is different than the original. The original book. And again, what it means, the HRN number is, if you look on the back, usually the back cover on the inside, I think it's the highest reissue number. It'll list all of the books that are available, and this will go through 167. In order for it to be original, and way back then, I don't think they did the HRN number. In order for it to be original, it would have to have 26 be the last book on the list, because this is issue number 26. They did do a lot of reprints. There are plenty of Classics Illustrated out there. Not many of them get graded, and in this case, only 3. And the final book I want to talk about on the list is from Fawcett Publications. They're still publishing Dennis the Menace. And issue number 77 from Fawcett has a total of 1 copy on the Census. But Dennis the Menace was still being churned out. The TV series by this point had been canceled. And that's going to do it for our 1965 list. Again, another year that's dominated by Marvel Comics. DC is, lagging a little bit, and I still am interested to see when we're going to see DC books start to break back into the top 10, because DC was outselling Marvel. There were no Superman books on this list, and Superman was the best seller. There are plenty of Superman books out there, which also, because there's, as opposed to, let's say, X-Men, I would imagine, there's just a larger supply. There are just books out there, especially lower grade books. It's not impossible to find Silver Age Superman. And it's not as in demand as, like I said, X-Men or Spider-Man. But it was still the top seller. But in retrospect, what collectors are going after are these Marvel books. Still a lot of first appearances here, mostly of villains. What do you think the top book from 1966 is going to be? I'm pretty sure I know what the answer is. Tune in here next week to find out. Don't cheat and look at cgcdata.com. It's more fun to have me reveal it to you, is it not? I'd like to thank you all for stopping by. And in the meantime, you can take a look at a couple of my other videos here. And this is Jim saying, until next time, enjoy your comics.